예, 안녕하세요. 오늘은 이번에 프린스턴 대학교 풀 파이낸스 애들로, 그러니까 전액 장학금으로 이번에 합격한 김재환 학생 오늘 인터뷰를 하러 왔습니다. 그리고 재환 학생하고는 제가 개인적으로 인연이 있던 게 저희가 일단 제 소개를 잠깐 해야 될 것 같은데요. 예, 저는 EI 아카데미를 운영하고 있고요. 그리고 빅터하고 IB 플래너라고 해서 같이 이제 미국 대학이나 한국 대학 컨설팅을 이제 같이 하게 됐고요. 이번에 재환이 소식을 듣고 너무나 기뻐했던 사람 중에 한 사람이었어요. 이어 10 때 수학 올림피아드 준비반에서 그때 참 어려우고 이랬었는데 이번에 너무나 좋은 소식을 들어서 예, 너무 반가웠습니다. 그러면은 제가 우리 재환이 질문을 제가 아마 궁금하신 분 많을 테니까 제가 대신 재환이한테 질문하는 걸로 시작을 하겠습니다.
Hello, my name is Jaewon Kim, and last year I just graduated from King's College, and this year I got into Princeton with full financial aid, and it's my pleasure to have this interview with you today.
Are you on the scholarship at the school?
Yes, I was on a scholarship for the last 5 years. It was an academic one, so for the first 4 years I had to sit an exam, and then back then I really didn't expect to get it, so I was so happy when I got it. And then for the 5th year, I had to apply for a re-extension, which I did get in the end. So I was really happy with that as well.
Okay. When did your Ivy League dreams begin?
My Ivy League dreams, I think they began around year 10, sort of mid to end of year 10. But then so that's when they started to begin. Although I heard of Ivy League when I was slightly younger, I didn't really seriously consider them until about mid to end of year 10.
Okay. What did you do to prepare for that dream?
So I started preparing year 11. So I went to a few classes in EIE to start off with in year 10. So I took a couple of maths and English lessons back then. But then in year 11 I started preparing for the SAT subject test. So so my mom and I discussed this and we said, okay, since you're stronger in the subject than the general SAT, we'll try and do the subject test first, and then we'll try focus on the general SAT tests in the end. So that's how I started off, and then I began to engage in more extracurricular activities to add to my CV, so I could have a chance at the Ivy League universities.
When did you start preparing for the Math Olympiad? Did you receive any outside help?
So my first experience with Maths Olympiad was actually from school, because there was a teacher there who set up a Maths Olympiad program for starting students. But then when I started, it was quite a small group. So back then I actually got quite a hand-on help with that teacher. So that's when I first got in touch with Maths Olympiad. I wasn't too serious about it in the first year, but from year 10 I decided I want to give this a go. So the first time I did work with EIE again for a couple of lessons in Maths Olympiad, and then I began to work on my own and then towards the end of the Maths Olympiad, when I actually got into the international team this year, I decided that I needed more intensive training. So that's the story of my Olympiad life.
Okay, cool. Apart from Olympiad, what other activities were you involved with?
So in school, King's College encouraged a lot of extracurricular activities. So in school I did debating, water polo, badminton, and I also did a bit of music, both the clarinet and the bassoon, in the school concert band and the school orchestra, as well as some, I actually did quite a few community service projects. One of them was the minimal reception, which took most of my community service time in year 12 and year 13. But before that, since we weren't allowed to do minimal reception services, I did a mixed series of community service, I suppose, such as daycare services and retirement home services. And then outside of school, I also did Queen Scouting and the Duke of Edinburgh Award. So through that, I did quite a few tramps throughout my scouting time. I had one each once a year. So they were mostly in the South Island, so I actually got to explore a lot of South Island sceneries in that way. And then at the end of last year and towards the beginning of this year, I started finalizing my Queen Scout Award. So at the end of February, around February, I finally got my Queen Scout Award. So that's what I did for my extracurriculars.
Okay. I think so you must be busy, but how did you control the time, the academic one, and then you also spend a lot of time to, the extra curriculum. How did you control your time?
So it was, I have to admit, it was actually quite busy, but with scouting, it was a bit more, I guess scouting wasn't too frequent compared to my other activities, so I guess that somewhat a bit alleviated it, and I did have to make sure that I did have time to make, time to do the things I needed to do on top of the extracurricular activities other than the Olympiad. So it wasn't easy, but at least it was daily routine, so that made it somehow easier. And I think that's the best advice I can give. Just know what you really want to do and make sure that you can give some time for the things you really have to do as well. That's the best advice I can really give.
The application process is a long and difficult journey, especially in SATs. How did you do in that?
So the SATs, as I said before, I actually started in year 11. But when I started in year 11, that was my subject tests. So in the subject tests, I generally did quite well. I did maths and the 3 sciences. So my scores there were I was actually really happy with my scores back then. And then my year 13 SATs, I started from last year, the beginning of last year. Although I started preparing for those, I did prepare for the general SAT for the time I was preparing for the subject test as well. But then I started officially doing the test in year 13. So I actually had to sit it 3 times to get the score that was considered to be satisfactory, which is over 2300, I believe. That's the general rule of thumb. Although 2200 over is still an okay safe line from what I've heard. So it took me 3 attempts, but I finally did it. And I had to say that in the last year, IB Plus's SAT courses helped me immensely. So thank you, Victor.
That's good. What do you feel like was the most difficult part of the application process?
Well, SATs were also quite difficult, but then I also found that writing the essays, I also found that to be very tricky. Because, to be honest, I'm not too much of a creative writer, and on top of that, I had to express myself creatively. Because these essays, a lot of these essays were quite personal, and they asked for your personal details. So, these essays did actually get me discussing with my mom, discussing about my life. And it was just about trying to make your life as interesting as possible and to show that you are a different person from all the other people out there. And to be honest, that is not an easy thing to do, because for a lot of people, I can imagine, and I can say this for myself, your life is your life, so it seems rather ordinary to you. To try and make it interesting, I think would be it was very difficult for me, because it was just my life and I felt that it was ordinary. So application essays were definitely the hardest part for me, and Victor did help me a lot with this part, arguably a lot more than he helped me with the SATs, which is actually a lot.
How was the interview?
I'm assuming this is the Princeton interview. Can I just clarify that? Yes. My Princeton interview, it's quite funny because at the time I thought I did just okay, so-so. I didn't feel it was my best interview ever, but then my interviewer actually contacted me a few days ago, and she said, "Oh, you're a very interesting person." So I thought, okay, so this interview didn't go as badly as I thought it did. So I guess in the end, I can say that it went quite alright because I did get the admissions, which is what I was really happy about. But so in the end, I'm not really too sure what they look for, but in the end, I have to say that my interview probably did go better than I thought it would.
How did you practice for that?
So at first, Victor actually did a practice interview for me for various admissions. So he asked me a couple of questions because he's also an LMS interviewer. So he had some useful resources such as the I guess the model questions that alumni are supposed to ask. So he either asked some of those to me, and then through different college at the perspective of different colleges. And at first, I just say that I was nowhere near prepared before that, but after a while, I got more comfortable with more interviews and more interviews. So in that sense, I prepared for that in that way. And I also had to do a lot of research on the individual universities because of the fact that each university looks for different things, and each university is unique. And they want you to know that each university is unique in their own way, even though they're all like the really, really top universities.
You got into Princeton with a full financial aid. How does that feel, and was it a surprise?
I was actually like really surprised with the amount of money I got. I was actually really, really delighted because I know a couple of people that actually weren't so fortunate as I was with the full financial aid package. So for me to get that, I was actually really, really, I was so happy with it. It meant that, okay, my mum doesn't have to work all her life, and my sister can actually do some more things. So yes, it was very good news to our whole family.
So is it also that Victor is a help there for them?
Yes, Victor did tell my mum, okay, you have to explain your situation like this and so on. So he did coordinate my mum mainly because I had very little to do with the financial aid organizing package because I don't know too much about my family's I didn't know too much about my family's financial situation.
Okay. Considering that only 2 students from entire South Korea got accepted, and only 2 from entire Australia, how do you think you as a Korean New Zealander got in?
But I actually felt so happy. Even without considering that statistics, I was actually really, I was over the moon that I got into Princeton. It was like, oh my god, wow, I actually got in. And I actually had to check again. It was like, did I read that right? Did I read that right? And then I was happy that I did read it right. And then, so I was actually really, really happy. And then I found out the statistics, and I was like, okay, wow, I was actually a lot luckier. I'm actually a lot more fortunate than I thought I was. So that was my reaction when I found out the statistics. But even without that, I was really, really happy, just from the competition in New Zealand itself.
Congratulations again. Do you have any last pieces of advice for future applicants?
I would say do look for extracurricular activities and do be involved. I agree with all that kind of all those advices, but advice should I say? Sorry. But in the end, you also have to choose the projects that you like. So I feel that's quite important. And then with the application essays, and then do prepare quite a bit of time for those because it is a lot of hard work, and I wish I took a bit more time preparing for my applications, especially with the essays. So I say take a bit more time, and with the extracurriculars, do what you want and do a lot of it, and be really involved in the things you do as well on top of that. Don't just be a passive attender.
Thank you for the interview.
Thanks for today's interview. I think it's very helpful for the students. So I'm sure you must tell something for your parents. Why don't you, in the camera, tell your parents?
Okay. I know this journey has been hard, especially for like the whole family as a whole. So thank you for being there throughout the whole way. And I know I couldn't have done this without your support. And also in addition to my friends and all the teachers at school, thank you for your support as well, because all this journey, you guys have helped me get to this stage. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, your parents they must be proud of you, and not only your results, and then your thoughtfulness for them. My last question is: any plan before you go to? When you go to? Will you go to America?
So I'm going to America. The semester starts in September,
yeah.
So I'll be going around that time.
Okay. So what do you want? Any plan before you go?
Oh, so before that, I'm actually enrolled in Auckland University right now, and in Auckland University, what I'm doing is I'm exploring different courses. Just because in high school, I was actually focused a lot on the sciences. So I decided, okay, if I go to Auckland this year, I might just explore some other fields. So although I'm still in maths. But I know one of the courses is actually an applied mathematics course, which isn't I guess high school doesn't explore that too much, so it was actually quite an interesting look upon applying maths in different fields.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm also taking economics because I didn't take it too much, so I decided why not? I will have a look at economics this year. And I'm also taking philosophy just for the same reason, because I didn't focus too much on the sciences.
Okay. So still, so you're gonna study before you go. I guess like maybe some the vacation. I mean, go to some trips. But anyway, so what's your dream? What's your aim in the future?
So my aim, I hope to be able to help a lot of people because I'm actually quite interested in the biotechnology area at this stage. But I think this, although this dream is quite flexible, I have to say it's not a set pathway. I think it could change depending on how I do in Princeton and everything. But at this stage, what I found quite interesting was the fact that we're on food shortages every now and then. So I think it'd be interesting to explore those kinds of fields where it actually helps different people obtain these resources that they need.
Okay.
So I think those fields are quite interesting.
Okay. I'm sure your dream is come true soon. And then congratulations again. And then thank you for the interview.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.